Should you tell people when you set a goal, or should you keep it to yourself? Hi, my name is Samar Abuselbi. I'm the host of the show Super Awesome You on the Super Awesome Mix Podcast Network. You can find more of this show's content at Super Awesome You on Instagram. This question to myself came up as a product of reading a book called 26 Marathons. In chapter 3 on his third marathon, I believe it was chapter 3, but anyway, he mentions that whenever he went out to run a marathon, he actually wouldn't share his internal goals with anyone. He would keep it to himself, and I think only one other human being would know, but most people were kept in the dark. And he kind of talks about that from the point of view of wanting to underpromise and overdeliver, and also just wanting to be a humble competitor and not necessarily talk a big game and then maybe fall flat on his face, so to speak. It's interesting because I am reading this book and read that chapter shortly after finishing The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary on Netflix, which is excellent. And I feel like he had the complete opposite approach. He very much would kind of set an intention and then share that intention very publicly in interviews and such, and then go out and compete against it. He basically set the bar that he needed to jump over, and that was his motivation to go and do that. The research, I think, is kind of equally mixed. I'm sure that you've heard that writing down your goal or setting a goal and sharing it can be a source of accountability. You don't want to disappoint others much more than you don't want to disappoint yourself. I feel like we are totally okay disappointing ourselves. At least I am. But so whenever you share your goal publicly, like on social media, or you tell a spouse or family member or friend, you have a sense of like, oh, they might check up on me and I don't want to tell them that I haven't done it or that I missed it. So that's going to motivate me to keep going. So there's that element of accountability that comes whenever you share it. On the flip side, because research always contradicts itself, there is other research that suggests that sharing your goal actually demotivates you to pursue it. And here's why. When you share a goal, like telling someone you're going to start a business or run a marathon or take up guitar, people cheer you on. They are excited for you, which is great. I mean, I love that. I should hope that you have people in your life that support you and get excited whenever you set a new goal. But the problem is in those moments, we get kind of like a happy cocktail in our brain in the same sense as if we have already achieved that goal. So we tell people we're going to run a marathon. Everyone cheers us on. If they don't, I roll. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Look at all this praise I'm getting. This feels so good. And your brain is kind of like, okay, well, I mean, that's really kind of the point, isn't it? Didn't we want to just tell people? I mean, didn't we just want that happy cocktail of drugs in our brain so that we kind of don't actually have to run the marathon now because we've already gotten a little boost. So job's all done, no problem here. And so the research does kind of suggest on that side of the aisle that perhaps sharing your goal can have a detrimental impact on your motivation and desire to go forward. I personally think it depends on what motivates you and what is your drive at the end of the day. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I've actually done both in different parts of my life. There are times when I'm very open about a goal that I have and I share it with everyone all the time, much to their delight, I'm sure. And there are times when I have an internal goal and it's really just for me. And I like it that way. And I might share it after the fact that I achieved it, or if I didn't, then I don't need to share anything. You know, it really depends on the context in which I'm operating. I think that should be true for you too. The other thing to consider is that there is such a thing as intrinsic motivation and external motivation. So intrinsic motivation is, as the name suggests, something that comes from within. So you are doing something because you feel a need to do that and you want to kind of be your own coach and achieve something that matters more to you than anything else. External motivation is whenever you kind of find motivation and joy and from being praised and from being celebrated and having other people cheer you on and see what you're doing. Again, there's nothing wrong with either form. It's just a matter of what moves you. And I do think that that can be context dependent. So when I'm out running, I actually really enjoy the cheering on and the praise and the celebration from my friends and family. It helps me cross the finish line knowing that I'm not doing this completely alone and that I've got cheerleaders, virtually and in reality helping me do that. So I kind of want to tell them my goal, and even if I miss it, the point is that I was shooting for it, and I think that that's really important. Whenever it comes to my job, I think that one's more internal for me. It's something to where I'm measuring myself against this idea of where I want to be in my role and how I want to grow in my career and what matters to me most in the next couple of years. That one, I don't feel the need to start an Instagram account and document my journey and share it with the world. I'm motivated by a completely different set of desires there. Basically kind of ignore the research, if you will, on whether or not it's better to share a goal or keep it to yourself. I think it's entirely up to you. If you think sharing it is going to hold you accountable and people are going to cheer you on and check in on you, fantastic. Share it all you want. Tell your neighbors, tell anyone that will listen, and see what you get from it. And hopefully it helps you cross that proverbial finish line. If you don't care what other people think about what you're doing, and this is truly just something that matters to you and you feel a drive to make it happen, don't feel the need to share it at all. You could also go with a middle ground of writing it down somewhere private, like in a journal, and having that kind of be the motivation and drive, because there is research, again, there's always research that suggests that writing down your goal or the result of your goal actually does help you achieve it. That one's pretty clear. The act of putting it down on paper makes it real in the world in a sense. It goes from being a thought to something a little bit more tangible than a thought. You're applying matter to it, if you will, by putting pen to paper. And I do think that you should, if you can, actually write it out. Try not to type it somewhere. But if you can't do that, typing is fine too. But by doing that, you are kind of inventing a future that you believe is going to happen. And your brain just naturally kind of keys in on that, as we've talked about in an early episode around manifestation. Your subconscious brain, which is basically like 95% of your brain, takes that in, and it's, so-called muscle memory basically starts to build to get you to that achievement. And I think that that's why that works. You're kind of programming the very inner part of your brain rather than just the thinking part of your brain, which is a very small part of our brain. Either way, hopefully you find the drive to achieve your goal. That's ultimately what it's all about, whether that's internal, external, or some other source. This week's song of the week, to kind of talk about that, is Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. I love this song. It's off of the so-called Black Album, but I believe it's just the self-titled album, Metallica. I know it's a controversial album because a lot of people didn't like that one, especially after their 80s, thrashing metal sound. This is a kind of a big departure from that, but I love the theme of the song, Nothing Else Matters. He's truly singing about how all that matters is for you to be yourself and that nothing else matters. And I think that is an important theme, not only in this week's topic, but in life in general. You should love yourself. You should be proud of who you are. You should be proud of the fact that you're trying to work to improve yourself and make your life a little bit better for you. So no matter where the motivation comes from, nothing else really matters as long as you are working towards a better future for yourself and for your loved ones. Until next week, I hope you have a super awesome week, and I'll see you next Tuesday.